These professors are used to talk from the podium.
Good evening. I'll start with an apology. I apologize not only at home. First of all, the role of respondent should be provocative. I should be the catalyst for a stormy discussion in dispute with the predecessors. But I agree with almost everything that has been said in the Billion report submitted to us. And I'll simply speak about certain nuances or will accentuate certain elements, but basically I agree with the major allegations. I'd like to accentuate the point. I believe the long-term strategic threat to Israel is not within the strategic system of American-Israeli relations if it's based on two paradigms or two orientations. The strategic orientation and the special relationship, it was said rightly that in the strategic context we can see an upgrading in intimacy, and the visit of the Secretary of Defense is illustrating it, in addition to President Obama's visit. The risk for Israel, paradoxically, is anchored in the realm of special relationship, where traditionally it gave Israel a network of security support, massive endorsement amongst American public opinion and amongst sectors, groups and circles that were overall supporting Israel. I'll be provincial. I'd like to focus it within the Jewish layer, within this special relationship. American Jews traditionally were the spearhead. They were the backbone of the special relationship that actually defended Israel and were actually a buffer versus efforts of American administrations at the time to exert pressures on Israel. And American Jewry fulfilled a role in wedging political initiatives with the groups and other circles, Congress, etc. And here we see a sudden vexing erosion bothering me. This is a segment of the liberal group, but it is among the reform large community, the strong large reform community, and not only focal elements whereby we can speak about resistance vis-a-vis the settlements. It's deeper. Beginning 88, at the beginning of legislation, Israel was a Jew, and the law of conversion and elements relating to the perception and raison d'etre in a pluralistic conceptual way. And maybe we have hoped that in the new government, the legislative process will stop after creating such alienation. But the long-term risk for Israel in this level is not of criticism, it's mainly some kind of alienation, indifference on the part of the liberals, upper middle class, college graduates, whose affinity to Israel is not automatic. 85% of American Jews are intermarried with non-Jews. 10%, only 10% are properly converted. The young generation, only 1/5 is actually speaking about deep affiliation with Israel. So the isolation and indifference vis-a-vis Israel's future or destiny is the long-term strategic risk in this context. It should be blurred by parameters and high percentages of support, whereby we can see large islands of alienation. Secondly, strategically speaking, I agree with Mr. Sanger that the situation wasn't as bad 4 years ago. At any rate, we see dramatic change currently. Number one, the starting point. President Obama's initial strategy was based on the approach that linked the Palestinian realm to the broader regional realm. And the United States was abandoning Iraq, needing some kind of a backup to act within a regional envelope, a Sunni regional partnership whereby Israel needed, not because of animosity of the president, Israel had to take the first step, namely the famous freeze that should have given the motivation to the Arab world and obviously the PA to create some kind of a texture of trust-building steps resulting with this deep regional partnership that might have replaced, partially at least, the American presence that was disappearing from the arena. Yet, and in spite of everything, President Obama was of opinion, as he told American leaders in 2009, that it was wishful to keep a certain distance in with Israel because too tight an embrace between Israel and the States would reduce the motivation of the Arab world to cooperate within this multilateral texture that was an imperative. Therefore, the music was harsh. One may repeat, saying rightly, that the strategic cooperation between Washington and Jerusalem, the Pentagon, the White House, and Israel was not impaired at all. It was actually upgraded. But the music wasn't very pleasant after the first freeze. The demand to further freeze, which obviously did not feed or set in motion some kind of a process of trust building. There were no parallel steps on the part of the Palestinians or the Saudis. What happened today? Where are we today? First of all, the pathway crushed vis-à-vis the Arab Spring. Secondly, in addition to lack of willingness to reward or create a reciprocity process, the electoral campaign changed the music against Israel to something politically incorrect. And today, traditionally, I would say, in American politics, we have a more sober administration with less illusions because we're back to the starting point, to square one. And what's the change? To an extent, the administration learned the failure of the first attempt. And there's a far-reaching tactical step that might become strategy. Simplified, the carrot instead of the stick. Not just the carrot, anchored in the strategy conceived by a decision maker or a clerk not familiar outside the States, Robert Comer, an expert of the Security National Council that pushed versus the historical transactions, arms, Johnson, Israel, the Hawks Institute, the Skyhawks, the patents, and he assessed, not because he was Zionist, he wasn't even a Jew, that only based of conditions of affection, only because of intimacy, Ben-Gurion would be more in comfort, and then Eshkol would be more appeasing, less fearing his security beyond supporting words, but also acts. He would be willing to concessions regarding Damona, the refugees, and current security. We're speaking about refugees of 48. This was a perception, killing them softly. And today we can see very clearly that Obama and Hagel and the entire administration take this outlook not only just based on placating Israel, number one, the Iranian element, and then Palestinian, upgrading relations and far-reaching arms relation, Israel more appeased, believing in American commitment that Iran will have no nuclear arsenal, willing to offer concessions in order to enable the United States some diplomatic space for maneuver with implications in the Palestinian realm. At the same time, we have to remember, and a feeling was created here, that Obama and his administration, Kerry Hagel, is one unit. I don't want to claim and to be far-fetched and say that basically we are back in time of time 40 years back when Nixon administration acted in a split way with two foresight of decision-making concerning foreign policy, the White House and the Security National Council, Nixon and Henry Kissinger, on the other hand, and State Department headed by Rogers, and they acted in different directions in the Middle East. Kissinger was in favor of freeze until 73. We don't really know whether it was October 73 or a few months earlier, and he actually sabotaged Rogers, who was more optimistic, came with comprehensive plans in 69 for an overall agreement for the Egyptian and Jordanian arena. I'm not saying it's similar, but there may be changed nuances in the temperament between the White House, that is quite sobered after 4 years in the Middle East, and the Secretary of State, who is not exactly a novice, but he's got enthusiasm and juvenile freshness of somebody who just started his office. And it seems to me that Kerry's ambition is not identical to Obama's caution. So we may see not a gap, but we have to listen to the music which is not necessarily always harmonious. It may be some atonal music. The punchline of the report, I accept it. Maybe there will be an attempt not to opt for a Carter overall agreement out of a disillusionment, but to go back to something like Kissinger after 73, creating a certain map, roadmap, security boundaries, and keep the core for a later time. But caveat, the president has a political margin for 2 years.
כלל בקדנציה שנייה של ממשלים הם עוסקים בתחזוקה או בצעדים בוני אמון, ואני חושב שדווקא ללכת על משהו יותר מתון, פחות שאפתני, יותר תואם את הדפוס ההיסטורי. נשיאים נכנסים לזירה בחלוף 4-5 שנים, בדרך כלל מכורח אילוצים, אם יש הסלמה, אם יש משבר, אם יש מלחמה, חס וחלילה, אבל לא מתוך איזו יוזמה ארוכה, מדודה, מסודרת, ארוכת טווח. יש להם סדר יום עמוס, היום אנחנו יודעים איזה סדר יום אדיר יש לאובמה, לא רק באסיה, אלא גם הפנימי, אפשר אפילו לפרט את סוג הבעיות. לכן מבחינה זו צריך להסתכל על יעד הזמן. אובמה של 2009, ראשית 2009, היה יותר, יכול להרשות לעצמו להיות יותר אוטופיסט, נכון, מאיזו תחושה שהכל אפשרי, השמיים הם הגבול. היום נדמה לי, יש לנו...
2 years, he is now humble. I don't think that John Kerry, Secretary of State, was very loyal to him. He's adopting the philosophy of humbleness because he is shaken so far. Thank you very much. So far, the beginning.